How long will you look for her?
No, I think till the day I die. I mean, how do you not look for your kid? You can't stop.
I just want everybody to know that it's been a 25-year struggle, and it would be nice to be able to put her to rest.
A dead man's calendar. That's what investigators found when they cleared out Paul Eugene Rowell's prison cell in January 2013. He'd already died, taken everything he knew with him. His stuff wasn't much. A pocket calendar, the cheap kind. Most pages were nothing, a few numbers, a few notes, routine stuff. Then a detective flipped to February 9th, written on both sides of the date in Rowell's own handwriting, 2/9/89. They stared at that for a while, because February 9th, 1989 wasn't just a random date. That was the day a 20-year-old UF student named Tiffany Sessions stepped out for an afternoon walk and never came home. To understand what that scrawl actually means, and why Tiffany's family is still waiting for answers over 35 years later, we need to go back. Back to a Thursday afternoon in Gainesville. Back to the last normal day she ever had.
I can't be happy because she's not home, and I can't plan a funeral because I don't know.
Tiffany Sessions wasn't the kind of person who just disappears. She was 20, a junior at the University of Florida studying finance. She had her life mapped out, not in a rigid way, but in the quiet, confident way of someone who knows where they're headed. One of her constants was her afternoon walk. Same route, same pace, almost every single day. Sometimes her roommate came. Sometimes she went alone. Either way she went. It was just part of how she moved through her days. Class, study, walk, repeat. She was also a creature of habit in the small stuff. When she walked, she left her wallet at home. She knew that route cold, didn't need it. Keys on the hook, ID on the counter. All she ever took was her Sony Walkman, her two-tone Rolex, a gift, distinctive enough that detectives would still be trying to track it down decades later, and whatever she felt like listening to that day. Her mom, Hillary, described her as someone who was ready to do something new. She was independent, ambitious, already thinking past graduation. There's a photo of them together at Tiffany's high school graduation in 1986. Both of them grinning. Neither one knowing that Tiffany had less than 3 years left. On February 9th, 1989, she told her roommate she was heading out for her usual walk. It was late afternoon, maybe 4, maybe 5 o'clock, still light, still perfectly safe feeling, the way an ordinary Thursday afternoon in a college town feels. She threw on her white Aspen sweatshirt, red sweatpants, tennis shoes, put in her earphones, walked out the door. Around 9 that night, the phone rang at Hillary's house. It was the roommate. She hasn't come back. The first break came fast, or at least it felt like one. Witnesses near Tiffany's route told police they'd seen a young woman matching her description. Blonde, athletic, red sweatpants, near a dirt trail cutting through the woods off the main road. She appeared to be talking to someone inside a vehicle, pulled over on the shoulder. That was real information. It gave investigators a location, a moment of contact, a starting point. They canvassed the area, collected vehicle descriptions, made public appeals for more witnesses. But the accounts fell apart under pressure. Nobody could agree on the details. Nobody got a plate number. Nobody could even say for certain it was Tiffany. The sightings were consistent enough to feel like something, but not solid enough to build a case. The trail went cold almost as fast as it had opened up. What it confirmed, Tiffany almost certainly didn't collapse in the woods or wander off somewhere. Someone had interacted with her. Whatever happened with another person present.
Pretty hopeful and continue to believe that she will return safely.
Years went by. Then a name came out of a prison cell. Michael Christopher Knickerbocker was already behind bars, serving 5 life sentences for violent crimes against women. Word reached investigators that he'd been telling fellow inmates he killed Tiffany Sessions. According to those inmates, he said he'd chained her to a tree and dumped her body near the Caloosahatchee River, down by Fort Myers. That was the kind of claim you had to take seriously. The man had the background for it. Law enforcement followed up, checked the river area, reconstructed his movements around the time Tiffany disappeared, and then the geography killed it. Knickerbocker wasn't in Gainesville when Tiffany vanished. The distance made his involvement unlikely enough, and the physical evidence thin enough that investigators couldn't go anywhere with it. No DNA, no corroboration, no thread to pull. They couldn't clear him completely, but they couldn't do anything with what they had, what it left behind. A convicted killer either chasing notoriety or stumbling around the edges of the truth. Either way, the case stayed open, the pressure kept building, and nobody was any closer to Tiffany. By the early 2010s, one name had risen above everything else: Paul Eugene Rowles, convicted murderer, serial sex offender. A man whose record reads like a catalog of failures by the system meant to stop him. He killed Linda Fita in Miami in 1972, was sentenced to life, and was paroled in 1985. He moved to Gainesville. In 1994, he was convicted again, this time for kidnapping and sexually assaulting a teenager from Clearwater. He was back in prison when he died in January 2013. His connection to Tiffany wasn't speculation.
Tiffany Sessions, meanwhile, suspected killer, committed violent crimes against women throughout the state of Florida. In 1972, Paul Rowles murdered Linda Fita in Miami.
In 2012, DNA evidence directly tied him to the death of Elizabeth Foster, a woman whose remains were found in 1992, about a mile from where Tiffany was last seen. Rowles had worked that area. He'd made scaffolding deliveries to a construction site along Tiffany's walking route. He wasn't scheduled on February 9, 1989. Detectives needed to sit down with him. They tried. By then, he was dying in prison, and he knew exactly why they were there. Cold case detective Kevin Allen described him as becoming extremely hostile when approached. He shut down completely, said nothing. Died in January 2013 without giving them a word. Then they went through his cell and found the calendar. What was left? A dead suspect, a mountain of circumstantial evidence, a cryptic entry on a cheap calendar, and no body. The most promising lead in the case's entire history had arrived just a few months too late.
This case is highly probable that Paul Rowles is the suspect in the disappearance and likely murder of Tiffany Sessions.
When Alachua County Sheriff Sadie Darnell addressed reporters in February 2014, she didn't hedge the way law enforcement usually does. She said it was highly probable that Paul Rowles had abducted and murdered Tiffany Sessions. Coming from a sheriff at a press conference, that's about as direct as it gets. Here's what she was working with: the calendar notation 2/29/89/2 on both sides of the date in Rowles' handwriting found after his death. An address book from his cell listing Linda Fita as his first kill, possibly referencing Elizabeth Foster. DNA tying him to Foster's murder, close to Tiffany's route. No alibi for the night of February 9th. His delivery route running directly along the path Tiffany walked. No single piece of it was a confession. Together, Darnell called it close to a smoking gun. Tiffany's father, Patrick, stood before cameras in a baseball cap that read "The Search for Tiffany Sessions" and said, "This is for real. This is our chance to close this case." Investigators searched the wooded areas Rowles had known. They dug through a cleared pine stand in northeastern Alachua County after a witness placed Rowles and a woman matching Tiffany's description on the road that afternoon. They found nothing. The part that doesn't end: the FBI has described the search for Tiffany as the largest missing person investigation in Florida history. She's been ruled out against 150 unidentified sets of remains across the country, meaning investigators have checked and checked again, and she isn't among them. Her Rolex watch, two-tone, silver, and gold, has never been recovered. Investigators hold on to the fact that metal doesn't break down the way a body does. Somewhere it still exists. Her mother, Hillary, has now spent more years looking for Tiffany than Tiffany ever got to live. In 2008, 19 years after that phone call, Hillary Sessions sat in a Florida state house and watched a vote. A new bill was moving through the legislature, requiring law enforcement to follow uniform procedures for missing persons, report disappearances to statewide and national databases, collect family DNA within 90 days. It was built on the wreckage of 1989, when officers told Hillary her college daughter was probably just out with friends. When there was no protocol, when no one told investigators, this is how you treat a missing person. At the last moment, the bill was renamed. It became the Jennifer Kess and Tiffany Sessions Missing Persons Act. It passed. It later became the foundation for Florida's silver, purple, and blue alert systems. More than 2,000 missing and endangered Floridians have been found alive because of those alerts. 2,000 people. Hillary didn't get Tiffany back. What she got was the knowledge that the next mother who picks up the phone at 9 o'clock at night, the next one who hears she hasn't come back, will be met with a system that actually responds. That doesn't assume the worst means nothing. That moves. She wrote a book about Tiffany called Where's My Tiffany? She talks to reporters every February. She still has a $25,000 reward posted for anyone who can help find her daughter's remains. She told a reporter in January 2026, "I'm very hopeful that somebody will be digging a foundation for a new building or a convenience store, and they are going to find remains." Tiffany Sessions walked out her apartment door on a Thursday afternoon in 1989. Her wallet was on the counter. Her keys were on the hook. She put in her earphones and turned toward the trail. Somewhere in Alachua County, she still is. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story got to you, subscribe, like, and share. You never know who might see it. Until next time, stay safe.